Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome back to Breaking into Breaking Bad with Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. Today we are discussing Season 5, Episode 13. I'm going to do my best here. Tohajili. Tohajili. It must be Italian.
Yeah, you got one.
It's not Italian. It's definitely not Italian. It's Navajoan. All right, Cabes, what happens in this episode?
Yeah, so this was a really, man, it started off intense and then ended even more intense. With this one, it starts with Todd showing his not so impressive meth cooking skills as Todd and Jack and Lydia all kind of crowd around to see the new meth that Todd has cooked, and I think it was only in the 70s percentile. It was not blue at all. So they had to deal with that, and then ends up really becoming a trap that Hank and Jesse and Gomi set for Walt. It was a roller coaster. If you guys remember this episode, it was a lot of using different people that Walt has, allied himself with. They catch Huel, and they basically convince him that Walt has killed Jesse in order for him to spill the beans. And Jesse basically devises a plot to trick Walt into thinking that they found his money. And so they took a picture of just a barrel of money that looked like it was the barrel that Walt had buried. And they ended up following Walt out to Hajile, part of the desert. And at that point, Walt finds out that he is caught. But before he does that, he thinks it's just Jesse, and he gives Jack and Todd the coordinates of where he's at. And at the very end of the episode, Jack and his goons show up, and it looks like it's about to become a showdown, and then the credits roll. So it was a pretty impactful episode, to say the least.
Yeah, there was definitely some impacts there at the end, especially, I think. Yeah, that's good, Cabes. All right, well, that's the summary of this episode. As we normally do, we'll start with the intro, which, Cabes, you basically already laid out. And I think it's key because it's Todd and his guys in the lab, and Lydia wants to see the operations because she's been getting some complaints from Czech Republic, wherever they're selling the meth now. And yeah, 76% purity is not up to her standards. But her biggest complaint is that it ain't blue. And that's the trademark. I mean, if it ain't blue, well, I mean, it's not the same stuff. So that becomes a problem for Todd's uncle and his guys, and that'll become it'll come back up here in a little bit. And then the intro ends with Walt calling Todd and saying that he wants his uncle to put a hit on Jesse. So that's the intro.
Did you notice when Walt makes the call to Todd, he doesn't even flinch, blink, ask questions. He just said, "All right, you got it." It was just, he's so dead inside. I mean, he's a psychopath.
Yeah,
he really
for sure.
is. And it was just like he's worked with Jesse for so long, and it was just like, "All right, you got it." One might say he's just that loyal to Walt and has a lot of respect for Walt no matter what. But at the same time, there was no questioning it whatsoever.
Yeah, you almost wonder if Jesse had called him and said, "Hey, I need you to kill Walt. He's going to turn on us." If he'd have just been like, "All right."
Right. Yeah, that's a good question.
You never really know to whom he's really loyal. He is very psychopathic, I think. And he has this very creepy, like, coming on to Lydia when they're in the lab. He's like getting creepily close to her. And
yep.
I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable if I were her.
Well, Lydia, I think, just from my opinion, kind of catches on to that, and she uses that to get him to try harder. Like
Interesting. Yeah.
she definitely knows that he has some kind of weird crush on her, and she was just like, what does she say? Like, I just need it. I need it to be blue. I need you to try harder.
And he's like, okay, I will. Yeah. Okay, so that's the intro, and then the show starts with Jesse at Hank's, and so I would describe this whole episode as a battle of wits between Walt and Hank, and it's pretty clear Hank completely outwits Walt, and you see that because they both try to trap the other. I mean, Walt tries to trap Jesse, and Hank tries to trap Walt.
The one thing that Hank has on his side that gives him the edge is that he has Jesse to relive every single thing that they've done and get into the mind of Heisenberg, because Hank already knows Walt, but he never has met this Heisenberg really, to put a face on it. And Walt doesn't know at the time that Hank is using Jesse. So that gives him the edge.
Yeah. And he also has Jesse's phone, which becomes critical,
right?
As we'll see in a minute. So Hank, I mean, he goes to great lengths to convince Huel that Jesse is dead, and he gets that like fake or real like beef liver or something, and it looks very much like Jesse's blown out brains on the floor when they throw it down. So, I mean, he goes, like I said, he goes to great lengths, gets very creative, and puts on a good show. And Huel completely buys it. And, why wouldn't he? Just given the nature of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Huel knows that Walt is, capable of violence. So he believes it in a heartbeat, and is able then to explain what they did with the cash, which is just as much information that Hank needs, which is all he said was, I don't know, we put the money in barrels and we gave it to him and he took it somewhere and probably buried it. And that's all that they have. But it ends up being enough information. Meanwhile, Todd's uncle wants to know, why he's curious, why are we killing Jesse? And this is an interesting exchange. He says, is he a rat? Is he going to, rat on us and tell the cops about us? And it's funny. You'd think that Walt, being smart, knowing that Todd's uncle is an ex-con, would understand, there's no mercy for rats, and that would be just exactly what he would need to believe to do the deed, because then he's got his own skin, in the game as well. But he says, no, he's not a rat. He says he just won't listen to reason. And that's interesting because it tells us that's what Walt is telling himself. Mm. If only Jesse would listen to reason, I wouldn't have to kill him. But because he won't listen to reason, we're justified in killing him. So it's an interesting, it's not a matter of justice. Like, well, he betrayed us to the cops, therefore he broke the one rule of all con men or something, and that's that you don't rat on your fellows. That would have been an argument for justice, but he doesn't do that. He says he's incapable of listening to reason. He's not being reasonable. And of course, we've seen this with Walt. He has a kind of dark sense of reason when he's calculating things, pros and cons. We've seen him do this a lot. But at the end of the day, what does reason look like for Jesse, you think?
Well, it's funny you say that the quote that he had mentioned, he just won't listen to reason. What Walt is really saying is, I got caught from Jesse trying to manipulate him, which worked out, and therefore he's angry, but he won't listen to what my view of the big picture is and why I had to do that. And then he justifies it like he always has throughout the whole show. Meaning his view is superior no matter what, because of what he is like come up with his mind on what makes the most sense as far as big picture. But Jesse is more justice. He was wronged. He was tricked. He was manipulated, and he wants to be right. And it's funny, you talk about the whole rat situation. That's exactly what he's doing. He has completely spilled all the beans to the DEA at this point.
Right.
And he's done all of that because at this point he is putting the justice of what needs to be done over everything else. So he's taken a big leap of faith, but at this point he's over it. He really is.
And Walt knows that he's probably talking to Hank, right?
No, he has absolutely no idea.
Okay, well, so then he doesn't know that he's being a rat then.
At this point, I think Walt only thinks that Jesse is very angry that Walt manipulated him the entire time, lied to him, got Saul, Huel, all of them to lie to Jesse.
Right.
So Jesse's worth was diminished substantially. And before, he was held higher as a partner, a 50-50 partner. He was one of the bosses. He was a decision maker. And then he found out really that he was being played by everyone, everybody. Right. And so at this point, this is his way of saying, you guys mess with the wrong guy. I'm angry. But as far as Walt's concerned, he just thinks that Jesse's like a wild card and he just don't know what he would do. But I don't think at this point that he would put Hank and Jesse's alliance together at this point. Well, he's not considering that.
Yeah. As I'm thinking about it, what does Walt mean by Jesse won't listen to reason? In his mind, it seems that he's thinking, well, the reasonable thing for Jesse to do would be to take his money and to disappear through Saul's guy and to leave, go away, start a new life, and take all the money and live like a king or whatever he wants to do, get a new start. In his mind, that's acting according to reason. And in a way, I guess that's what Walt is thinking. That's what I would do if I were in his shoes. And yet, we've seen this throughout the show. There's a human nature element that Walt is completely oblivious to, which is that human beings don't operate strictly by calculating, what's going to help me with my material well-being strictly. They also are concerned with things like justice, like you said, and revenge too. And we might even say there's a difference there, but it kind of all blurs together. And at this point, Jesse's not even trying to think, well, how can I save my own skin? Let's see. Well, they'll give me a lenient prison sentence if I give them Walt.
That's a really good point. They haven't mentioned that at all. They haven't mentioned any kind of deal. Like if they did, it was off screen. But at this point, it's just, I want to help you catch this guy because that's what's right. Period.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Right. Understood as this guy wronged me and therefore I want to get even with him. Yeah. And I think that point plays out with where the rest of the episode goes, insofar as Walt has, like you said, he's diminished his value, Jesse's value, but he's also underestimated, which is to say he has not valued Jesse's intelligence enough and not valued he hasn't appreciated how much resentment Jesse has and how he can turn that into energy to get back at Walt. And so in a way, Walt's right. He's not acting according to reason insofar as he's not thinking strictly of what's going to translate into his material well-being and security the most. For him, the uppermost concern is getting even. And like you said, Walt has turned everyone against him. And so he's not just feeling angry at Walt. he's feeling angry at everyone, but everyone has turned against him because of Walt. So Walt tells Todd's uncle, I can flush him out. I can get him to come out of hiding, and I know exactly how to do that. And so this is when the battle of wits begins, because this is Walt's plan versus Hank's plan. So Walt's plan to flush Jesse out is to go to Andrea's house, which is kind of a ballsy move. And he puts on his act, oh, I'm just concerned about Jesse, he's using again. And he's manipulating Andrea. And he's like, he gets her to call him and leave a voicemail. And what does he say? Something like, he won't answer when I call, but maybe he'll answer if you call, because, he cares about you. And I guess we can ask, do you think that was a good plan if Hank wasn't holding Jesse's phone? Because Hank is the one who gets the message and he intercepts it. So Jesse never hears it.
Right.
But we can kind of play a hypothetical here. What if Jesse had gotten the voicemail? What would that have made him? I mean, he's thinking, oh no, Walt, this is a subtle threat that Walt is going to kill Andrea and Brock. And I'm going to go crazy and run over there and try and save them. I mean, is that what Walt's thinking?
Well, Walt's trying to play on Jesse's emotions because he knows that Jesse can be very emotional. And he also knows that Jesse knows everything that he did with the poisoning of Brock. And so I wouldn't put it past Jesse to think that he would do whatever was necessary to protect himself, meaning Walt. So, yeah, if Jesse had intercepted that could have actually been a very substantial trick getting a response from Jesse.
If Hank hadn't intercepted it, right.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, if we're just looking at it, it seems like, okay, that was a good play. It was a good play, Walt. But Hank did intercept it. And so Jesse never gets the message. And I'm wondering, is that a matter of fate or fortune, unlucky? Was he just unlucky that Hank intercepted it? Or did Hank outsmart him here?
I think Hank outsmarted him because he had held onto that phone for a reason. And he was checking it constantly. And so I think that was a smart move on Hank's part.
Yeah. But it wasn't necessarily a miscalculation on Walt's part, though. I mean, he didn't know.
Yeah, he has no idea Hank's involved at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Walt's plan, and it's a pretty good plan given all that Walt knows. But it's not enough. So instead, Hank's plan to outwit Walt is to take the teeny bit of information that Huell gave them, and that's that he had these barrels, and all I know is he buried them. And so they pretty cleverly, consider, if we just send him a picture of a random barrel with cash in it, he's not going to look that hard at the barrel and at the ground. He's just going to flip out because the money is the one thing that it's like touching the nerve center for Walt. If that disappears, then everything he's done has been in vain.
Right.
And so they
did all this in the first place. Do you remember how much money he said in season 1 that he needed to get?
Of course I remember. Yeah, of course I remember. Why don't you tell everybody, just because I'm,
I think it was 757 or 747,000.
Yeah. And how much does he have buried?
80 million.
80 million. Wow. Yeah, and I will say burying it all together might have been a mistake. He could have buried them in 2 different places, and then
he also had to think quick. He was out there all night.
True. Yeah, and he's one guy, and those are some big barrels, and the desert is not necessarily easy to dig, I would imagine, but
especially not in Tuajili.
No, never. Not there. No. Not the Navajo desert. So Jesse calls Walt on his phone, which he now has.
Well, you skipped a part.
Did I?
Before that, you see Skyler teaching Walt Jr. the ropes at A1A car washing.
Oh, yeah.
And he keeps on telling everyone to have an A1 day. And then that's when
right. And then Saul shows up.
Saul shows up with a bloodied face that he'd gotten from Jesse, obviously giving Skyler a scare. And then that's when he gets to, meet with Walt and discuss. And then at that point, that's when Walt gets to,
yeah, and he tells him that Huel's gone AWOL, and maybe Jesse's killed him. So I guess that tells Walt that his plan with Andrea hasn't worked, and Jesse is going crazy.
Right.
So then so if Walt's thinking, okay, Jesse's really, really crazy. So then when he calls Walt and sends him a picture with the barrel of cash, and he tells Walt, I'm going to burn $10,000 a minute until you come out to meet me where the cash is buried. And I'm trying to think, how do they track Walt? Did they use the police methods of triangulating his cell service or something?
Right. They could have put his the tracker on his car when he went into the car wash, and then just stayed a distance, because we know that Hank's used that before. Sure.
Well, so at that point, I think it's safe to say that Walt stops thinking and just starts reacting.
Right.
And flips out. And I mean, he has the emotional reaction that he was hoping Jesse would have when he got the message about Andrea, and that he would not make good judgment calls.
Correct.
And so Walt does not consider, maybe they have a way of tracking me, and I'm leading them right to where the cash is.
Yep. And Jesse makes sure that Walt doesn't hang up through the whole time, so he keeps him in that emotional state the whole time, and he's just flooring it as fast as he can, and he's just pleading with Jesse not to do it.
Right. Yeah, and so in this episode, you see two images that are used to great effect to bring about an emotional reaction. So first with Huel, with the fake shot of Jesse's murder and his brains splattered on the floor. And here with the fake barrel of cash that's buried. But that's all. It's very believable in both cases because of how primed each recipient is to receive that message and believe it. So Walt gets out there. He realizes pretty quickly when he sees no one there that he's been had. And there's this, I mean, it's great acting on his part, where he has this, it dawns on him what's happened, and he knows, somebody's about to come and arrest me.
Right.
So then he makes, like you said, he makes the fateful call to Todd's uncle and people and tells them the coordinates. And then while he's on the phone with Todd's uncle is when Hank and Gomi and Jesse show up. And at that point, Hank is unwilling to call Todd's uncle to say, come and kill these three guys.
You mean Walt?
Sorry. Yeah. Walt's unwilling to call Todd's uncle and say, come kill them. And I mean, that's interesting, right? You'd think, given that would be all he would need to do, presumably, and just say, hey, they took me out here. He doesn't have to tell Todd's uncle that the money is right there, and they could kill Walt and then take the money. At that point, I think Walt knows they'd never found the money. I just led them to the area. And Hank comes out and says, we're going to find it eventually. You might as well turn yourself in. But Walt tells Todd's uncle, he calls them off and says, never mind, don't come. And then he slowly, reluctantly, dramatically turns himself in. And it's a moment when you see him get cuffed, and Hank reads him his Miranda rights and puts him in the car. And it does look like the credits are about to roll, and that's the end of the show. And then you can sort of see everything happen in slow motion when
Well,
Todd's
there was also a powerful moment too when he realizes, Jesse has been working with Hank this whole time, and he just stares at him and he just says coward.
interesting. Yeah,
And
I had forgotten about that.
it was zoomed in on his face. It was just very like, you cheated. You had to use them to beat me.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. But I think even in that moment, Hank refuses to give Jesse the credit for outwitting him with Hank.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at this point, Hank is just so over the moon. He's been trying to get Heisenberg since the end of season 1 when Heisenberg became a thing. It's been what, 2 years, give or take,
Yeah.
on this whole
Right.
investigation, and he finally
And almost got him killed. Yeah.
and he literally he calls Marie the first thing, and he was so happy to say, I got him. Like, give me this admiration. I've earned this. I finally caught him.
Right.
And we won.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
Yeah. So at this moment, I don't know. I thought Gomi was so Todd's uncle and his guys. There's more of them than there are of Hank and Gomi and Jesse, and they have superior firepower, and they have cover behind their cars. Meanwhile, Gomi is just standing there with a shotgun. He's got, I don't know, however many rounds in his shotgun, but that's it, and he's in the open. And Hank's got his handgun. Meanwhile, the other guys have very high-powered rifles and lots of rounds to waste. And it's pretty clear when they've got, both of them are, got their guns at each other, and they're both telling the other to put their guns down. I would have thought Gomi and Hank would have said, we can't win this. We should put our guns down, but they don't. And there's just this standoff. And what is it that leads to, so Todd's uncle shoots first, right? Or his guys do.
I think one of his lieutenants or one of his main guys fires the first round.
Yeah. And do you remember why? Is there just like we got these guys, let's just waste them? Or is it a fear, a mutual, like they're going to shoot us, I might have to shoot them? I mean,
at this point, they have no idea who those guys are, but they also know that they were hired for a job. And
that's right. Well, critically,
at them,
Critically, though, Gomi says we're cops, right? And Todd's uncle says, "Show me your badge."
That's right.
Because they know the difference between shooting a random person and shooting a cop.
Right. So they've probably been in situations before where they've had guns drawn against cops, and they know there's probably you either do this or you're going to go to prison. So they, at this point.
Yeah, but Gomi doesn't. They don't show the badges because they would have to put their guns down in order to do that. And there's a complete, I'm not putting my gun down. Like,
yeah.
And so I don't know if that's a fault on like Gomi and Hank's part, but I don't know what other choice they had. They probably would have thought the moment that I reach around and try and grab my wallet with my badge in it, they're going to shoot us. So I don't know how you prudently get out of that without it going the way that it did.
Yeah, as far as cliffhangers go throughout this show, this has definitely been one of the biggest ones so far.
Yeah, right. Because then everything just explodes in gunfire. But somehow nobody, in like the 30 seconds of intense gunfire that we see before the credits roll, I don't think anybody gets hit. It's kind of like they're all bad shots.
Yeah, I think you see Hank and Gomi go behind their vehicles, and so they're both parties are shooting from a covered position. So it could just be most of Jack's guys are just doing covering fire, and Walt, and Hank and Gomi are just trying to respond in kind. But yeah, but the fact that they were able to get to cover when Todd's uncle and his guys had multiple guns trained on them is got
kind of amazing that they.
Gotta see the rest of it.
Yeah, right. So what do we see before the credits roll? Walt is trying to hide in the SUV, and he's pissed because he, in a way, he knows he can't really win in this situation because either he's going to get shot, or Todd's uncle is going to get shot, and that's bad, or Hank's going to get shot, and that's bad. I think it's critical to see, and again, going back to the decision that Walt makes to call Todd's uncle's guys off. Is it because he refuses to be responsible for Hank's death? Like that's a line he won't cross?
Could be. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to family, like actual family.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, is this a moment when like Walt over Heisenberg wins? It seems like Heisenberg would just be like, shoot them all. Like I wanted to kill Jesse anyway.
Right.
And now I see he's betrayed me.
Right. Yeah. No, Walt's was becoming superior over Heisenberg at that moment.
And this is a theme that we started the conversation with way back in episode 1, and maybe we'll talk about it more as we approach the end here. But seeing Walt as a noble figure, as a kind of villain that you also sympathize with, and it maybe is because of moments like this where Walt, like you said, he overcomes Heisenberg and has this sympathy and won't cross the line when it comes to killing Hank, even though every bit of his interest lies in doing exactly that. Because he knows even if somehow he were able to get out of this mess, Hank is not going to give up. Right. He is Javert. I mean, he's relentless. He's not going to give up the hunt. So it seems like the only way he could ever live in peace is if he were to kill Hank, but he refuses.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can call that a virtue, but
I think he ultimately knows there's just too much collateral. Then there's Marie. Obviously, at this point, he knows Gomi's involved. He doesn't know if the rest of the DEA is involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of going on in this episode towards the end.
Yeah. And that brings up another point, so why doesn't Hank call in reinforcements at that moment?
It's a good point.
Is it because he wants the glory for himself? He wants to be able to bring him back to the DEA. Yeah. And so that would be a fault on Hank's part as getting too prideful and saying, I don't want to.
He couldn't bring this to them unless he had everything. But you're right. At that point, when they're under fire, the right move is to call for backup.
Well, he should have called for backup before then. I don't think he has time. I mean, they're way out in the Tahajili.
Well, that's true. It's a really isolated part.
Yeah, very isolated. Very isolated.
Yeah. Well, episode's going to be pretty intense.
Yeah. So we'll just have to leave it there because that's where they leave us. Everything's up in the air. We have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, I have no idea. You may have some idea, but
just a little idea.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening and for liking and sharing this episode. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And we hope you'll join us next time as we break into the next to last episode, I think, of
three
more episodes to the very end here of Breaking into Breaking Bad.